Everyone, I'm Layla. I'm a compulsive overeater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the Cambridge Grey Sheet. I write them down, I commit them to my sponsor, and I don't eat in between meals no matter what. And today, the most important thing in my life is abstinence. I just want to thank Vicky very much for asking me to speak tonight. I don't know why, but my heart is racing a little bit and I just feel a bit like my head's gone completely empty. And anyway, but I feel my abstinence date is the 25th of March. So I think I just looked at my little app and let me just tell you, so 268 days, which is, it's an absolute miracle because I come from a place where I couldn't get 5 minutes, I just couldn't get this stuff, and I don't feel like it's a struggle anymore. I don't mean that like, in a big-headed way, but it's just such a blessing. So anyway, how was life like for me before Grey Sheets and growing up? I haven't really done a timeline, but I just know from, like, I can remember in my teens always feeling like huge, like repulsively overweight, and that wasn't the case at all. Actually, I was quite slim in my teens, but in my head I was just disgusting and overweight and needed to be thin or skinny. And I remember first going to Weight Watchers with my nan when I was about 16. And actually at that time, maybe I was a little bit big. I suppose maybe in my teens I was a bit up and down, but I was never sort of how I was in my head. And I think from that point on, I think the first time I ever went to Weight Watchers, I did have maybe some sort of success, but I even think that was a bit of a fluke because I never really could stick to a diet, even back then, all those years ago. But for some reason, this thing just went on in my head. It's hard for me to describe, but the obsession, I just was always consumed by losing weight, calories, what I've eaten, what I haven't eaten. And actually this time round, just like I've gone on a couple of like juice retreats, boot camps. Oh my God. And they've just been agonizing. I remember going on this boot camp once and we had to get up at like 5:30 in the morning in the middle of winter with a head torch on and go running, and I couldn't even, run for the bus, and would be having to do miles. And then you'd get, for breakfast, just, I can't even tell you, the breakfast was like this big. It was just horrendous. But I'd done all things like that and put my body through just not a very good time. I abused laxatives from a very young age. I did try and make myself sick, and I hated being sick at the best times. Like when I think of being sick, it was probably through alcohol consumption, but I could never actually make myself sick. And I remember one of my friends saying to me that whenever she overate and felt bloated, she just put her fingers down her throat. And I remember her being there and me saying, I'm going to go and try it, and coming out the toilet, my eyes were bloodshot and watering, but I couldn't do it. And I remember being really disappointed, thinking that I couldn't do that. But, now I think maybe that was a bit of a blessing. So anyway, that's kind of how my life was. I denied myself relationships, going out, sort of in my teens and early 20s. I did go out, but to be honest, most weekends was really just spent at home eating in my bedroom, and most evenings that's what I'd done. And as time went on, I guess for some years I could almost stick to a diet or some form of healthy eating. Maybe from Monday through till Friday looked relatively okay, and then weekends were bad with binging. But over a period of time, I could no longer do that. So I was binging, every day. And certainly, for a long time, years, even way before I come into Grey Sheets, my binges it just felt like every day was a binge, and I'd go to bed thinking tomorrow would be different. I'd eat everything in the cupboards when all the sweet, crappy, sugary stuff was gone. I'd even eat things that, maybe we consider abstinent on the Grey Sheet, but somehow I'd make them, I'd sweeten them up with whatever non-Grey Sheet Grey Sheet stuff. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, once all the nice, delicious things run out, even though I might feel horrendously sick and full up, I would, I'd eat things in the cupboard just that weren't very nice, but just to put something in me. And I never really understood it, and I never really thought about it. I'd just done it, and then I'd go to bed in this mad panic thinking, right, tomorrow. It was almost like every night it got worse and worse and worse, and the way I wanted to diet become more and more extreme. And it went from eatingly healthy to just eating fruit or just doing these shakes or the Cambridge diet. I mean, there's so many things that I tried, the cabbage, everything. The only books that I had in my house, the only books I ever read up until, a few months ago, were diet books.
5.
Thanks, Stacey. So that's how life was for me. And, you know, for a period of time, I kind of thought that it was somewhat normal. You know, I even described to my friends all the time, I can't stop eating, I can't stop eating, I eat till I feel sick. You know, it was almost something that we laughed and joked about. My friends would say, oh, I'm the same, like I ate this much last night. And we'd all be sitting there talking about how much we ate and, you know, couldn't stop eating. But I always had this underlying sense that they weren't quite the same. Anyway, what do I want to say? So then what happened? Well, loads of kind of things happened. I did go to my doctors. I tried to get help in other ways. I had some counselling. I had this CBT therapy, but I still think I was in massive denial around the food. I kind of still thought nothing was really wrong with me. And actually nothing really helped. And then I went into recovery for drugs, and I'm coming up to 2 years in January, clean and sober, in another fellowship. But pretty much as soon as I got clean through cocaine, it's like the food just come back in a vengeance. And, you know, I believe today that food is my primary addiction. And the one thing I loved about drugs was it's the only time in my life that I've really been super skinny. But in the end, not even cocaine could keep me thin, because when I weren't using drugs, I was just stuffing as much food as I could get in my face, mainly to keep me awake, because, you know, I'd binge on cocaine for days, and, you know, then I'd binge on food. But my sponsor in CA was 11 years clean in CA, and she'd been in another food fellowship for many years with some element of success. I don't even really know if you can call it that, to be honest. I don't know that she'd ever got 90 days in this other fellowship, but I joined that other fellowship, and my God, it was just, you know, I'm blessed that I went to that fellowship, because that's how I found GreySheeters, indirectly through that fellowship. And actually a lot of those people are in this fellowship now. But nonetheless, I really struggled with abstinence. I just couldn't get it. I couldn't get a day. I couldn't stop thinking about food. I suppose just white knuckling it. And, you know, the food always won, no matter how, you know, sometimes I'd ring in my sponsor knowing full well that I wasn't even going to eat my first committed meal, that I was going straight in the shop to get non-abstinent food. And I'd be sitting on the bus on the way to work, making myself feel sick. And then I come to GreySheeters, and I remember my first experience with GreySheeters. Someone I knew through various fellowships literally come with me, went to a meeting. We had she told me what to have for breakfast. I had an abstinent breakfast, went to a couple of meetings in High Street. She took me for an abstinent lunch, a weighed and measured lunch on my day one in, you know, and then she come back to my house, got my abstinent shopping with me, and come back to my house. I couldn't, you know, I could not believe it, and was showing me how to prepare my meals for the next couple of days. And I think I got 14 days of pure bliss. You know, it was like, I couldn't believe it. It felt like it just happened naturally. But, you know, I was treating it a bit like a diet. I weren't doing all the things I should. And I just, you know, I succumbed and I ate. And then I was out the door for however long, and I couldn't get back. And that's been my experience. Once I pick up, I'm gone, not for days, normally for weeks, for months. And yeah, so I was in and out. And then I went back to the other food program. And then I come back, and what happened was, this lady I heard once in High Street, I don't know why, but I really took to her, and she sponsored me, but she had this 3 strike rule. So I'd used up my 3 strikes, but then I asked her, I said, you know, them 3 strikes? I said, is it a bit like points on your driving license? I said, after a little while, do they elapse and I get a new set? And she took me back on. And that was 268 days ago, or however long it was, you know, and that was just, I really feel like that was God or the universe or a power greater than me working in my life, because I remember that day. I remember where I was, and you know what? It was just like a little thing in my brain that went, oh, maybe you should message that lady, you know. And then, you know, my feet went to the supermarket, only ran the abstinent aisles, got my lovely, bright, colourful food shopping, and went and prepared my meals. And, you know, I never, ever anticipated that, you know, that would be 9 months next week. And, you know, what I've done is, so yeah, she was my sponsor. I'd done kind of everything I was told. So, you know, by that point, I don't know what happened, but I think I just started, I don't even know if I thought about it. I just started doing what I was told, and I was very open to to all the suggestions. And I started using all the tools. I had like this little checklist each day, you know, reading my 12, whatever chapter of the big book, doing my gratitude list, making 3 calls, getting to a meeting, weighing and measuring, etc. And
That's 10.
thanks, Stacey. And that's what I've continued to do. And for whatever reason, I had to start working with another lady who is amazing as well. And she's just taken me through my steps, which has been wonderful. And, you know, what I'd like to maybe just spend the last 5 minutes is just talking about what my life is like today. So, you know, please God, next week, Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, I'll be 9 months. It's the longest the longest. That's what I feel like today. Like I've got all this strength, but the longest stretch of abstinence by far I've ever had. And, you know, I don't know if it's about time. I feel like it is a little bit because, you know, I've heard other GreySheeters say about the days in the bank, but I can't explain to you, like my life is the same, but my life is so much different today. I've never known, you know, when I was in CA, people used to talk about peace of mind, and I used to sit there and think, what are they talking about, peace of mind? You know, today, like I get up in the morning, and to be honest, some mornings I'm not even thinking about my breakfast. Most mornings, to be fair, I am thinking about my breakfast, but it's just like my head's almost pretty empty to some extent. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I definitely feel this sense of peace. I feel a deep sense of gratitude to be alive today. Like I want to be alive, more than alive. I feel like my life's just beginning because of this program, and that's something really special. I've made amends. You know, I bumped into an ex-boyfriend of mine on the train I hadn't seen for a long, long time the other day, sat next to him on the train. I think I shared this before, and made an amends to him on the train. But there's so much more than that. You know, the relationship with my mum, the relationships, it's almost like everything about my life, the value of it has just increased tenfold. And I can't even really explain why, but you know, sometimes just when I leave my house in the morning, I just think, wow, you know, life's really beautiful today. And you know what, I think I'm going to leave it there. And I just want to say thank you. I'm abstinent, grateful and happy to be alive today. Thanks, everyone.